Douglas was a CEO of a major bank. He was seen as the most horrible person in the office. People would see him and duck behind their cubicle walls in fear. He loved to scream at employees, and they had lots of names for him, but mostly they called him Psycho Doug. He was a horrible tyrant and would smirk after shouting at people for making mistakes. Doug had worked his way up the company, one knife in an employee's back after another, just like an ice climber would climb a wall of ice. An employee even went missing, and there were rumors that Psycho Doug had something to do with it. Douglas was his normal self today. He was shouting on the phone, and his lovely secretary Joan was typing away at her desk, doing her work as usual. She was scheduling meetings and typing up documents for Douglas. As she was working, she heard Psycho Doug slam the phone down, and it made her jump a little. He came out of his office and stormed over to Joan. He was just about to open his mouth when he stopped. "Wow, that's a nice ring on your finger. Where did you get that?" The ring was extremely well made and ornate, with a few small colored stones set in it, and engravings that were perfectly symmetrical. "It was passed down within my family," Joan said. "It was crafted many years ago and bought by my great-great-grandfather," she added. "How much for the ring? I want it," Psycho Doug said. Joan politely said that it was not for sale. Douglas wasn't used to not getting what he wanted. He told Joan that he could give her a lot of money for the ring, but he would get it one way or another. Joan politely declined again. "This is worth more than money," she said. Later that night, Douglas could not sleep. All he could think of was the ring and how he needed it. He didn't even have anyone to give it to. He just wanted it, and when he wanted something, he would get it. The next day, he approached Joan again, this time offering a lot of money to her, and she again politely declined. "Well," he said, "I guess maybe you should find another place to work," and he fired her on the spot. She was surprised and a little saddened, as she had just started this position, and it was a great job. She started to pack her things. Douglas came back and sheepishly told her she didn't need to go. He was already in trouble from the higher-ups for firing the last 5 receptionists, all for different reasons he could not tell anyone. Douglas had his own brainstorming session, but this time he had no one else's ideas to shout down. How would he get the ring? He could offer her more money, but she didn't seem interested in money at all. He had already tried that twice. What would make her give up the ring? Maybe he could hire someone to get it for him, and they could intimidate her into giving it up. That would save him time and effort. If this plan went wrong, it would look very suspicious. She would be the second receptionist to go missing from his office. He thought again, I could dress up as a burglar and hold her up, then get her to give me all her possessions and the ring all at once. Then he could snoop through her phone. He always loved stealing the office people's phones. He would get a kick out of going through their personal chats and see how the swine were complaining about him. Then it came to him the perfect plan: sneak into the house and snatch the ring while Joan was sleeping. He would get that ring. Later that night, he snuck off to the Human Resources Department and looked up her file. It had her address on it, and he scribbled it down on some torn old paper he found on someone's desk. She wasn't married and had no dependents. This was great news. He would just go there and get the ring by force if need be. He was smirking at the thought of getting exactly what he wanted after being denied it. She was so idiotic for turning down the money. He arrived at her apartment late that night. It was dark as there was a new moon. He creeped around the house looking for where she was. Then he saw her reading a very old, odd, large book in the living room. He sneered while glancing through the window. It was late and he was getting restless. He heard a weird presence in his head saying, "Go home, you shouldn't be here." This was unsettling for him, as he had never had his own mind tell him not to do something. His mind was usually supportive of his psychotic ideas, egging him on to do the most violent, horrible things that it could come up with. What was taking her so long? She was just sitting there reading. His eyes were locked on the ring on her finger. He would have that ring no matter what. Should he go in now and snatch it with force? I will wait, he thought. While she reads, he could check for a way to get in. Slowly and methodically, he checked for open windows. He lifted the windows very lightly to see if they moved a little. He eventually found one. It was at the back of the house. His plan was all coming together. It would be his. He went back to his original viewing spot to see when she was off to bed. He would also have to wait till she was sleeping. All this waiting was making him bored, and the boredom was killing him. He looked through the window once more, but no one was there. The book was down on the table and Joan was nowhere to be seen. He scanned the house with curiosity. Something blocked his view suddenly. She was standing right there in front of him. She had no expression on her face at all. He ducked down into the shadow and heard the scraping sound of curtain hooks moving on a rail. Had she seen him? He listened in carefully. Joan was moving through the house. She was very light on her feet and didn't make much noise. He was struggling to locate her. Then the light in the bedroom went on. He was safe. Now he needed to get into the house and grab the prize. He got into the house through the back window he had discovered earlier, trying not to make a noise. He creeped lightly through the room and towards the bedroom. Where could she have left the ring? Douglas was determined to have it even more. The risks had gone up and it would be his now, one way or another. He walked into her bedroom and saw her sleeping, the ring on her bedside table. She was facing away from the door, her back facing him. He stared at her to see if she was moving for a long time. She was motionless. He raised his foot and stepped into the dark room. She said in a calm voice, "I know you're here, Douglas. Don't take my ring," she pleaded. Douglas was too close to give up now. The ruse was up, so he calmly walked over to the bed and leaned over to get the ring. He snatched it violently, and as his skin touched the ring, he felt a presence pass into him. What was that, he thought? I suddenly don't feel so well. Joan sat up and smiled at him. That was a bad idea. He tried to lunge at her, but he could not move. Your greed and obsession have led you to ruin, she said in a soft voice. The ring amplifies the suffering you have given onto others and gives it back to you. Douglas had lost control of his limbs and he was unable to move. First, his elbow and arm bent backwards, breaking at the joint. Then his fingers started to move in obscene ways, the bones snapping easily like dry spaghetti. He tried to cry out, but no sound left his throat. All he could feel was the excruciating pain. Don't worry, Joan said. You won't pass over to any other side. You will feel all the pain you have inflicted on others for eternity. He lifted from the ground and was painfully rolled into a ball. Something was crushing him and compressing him. He was slowly being sucked into the ring, just like a soul being sucked into an endless abyss. A shiny new red stone appeared on the ring, and Psycho Doug was never seen or heard from again. No one could explain what happened to him. He had simply disappeared. We hope that scared you a little. Remember to subscribe, and check out Creepy Midnight Stories for more.